Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Northern Rose podcast. It's me, Henry North, with Dr. Adam North. So today we really wanted to talk about some of the major stories that we've picked up getting out and about in Manchester and seeing really where the cracks in the city lie, to be honest. And immediately we were taken to Manchester's mental health care crisis. We've covered it a bit before on the Northern Rose, but for those people sat at home who don't really understand to what extent how bad this crisis is, if you've got a long-term mental health issue, you almost can't expect any help from the NHS at all. You are left to kind of look after yourself. But on top of that, is if you are suffering some kind of mental health problem, the earliest or within the period of time that people will try and reach you, the earliest is 2 weeks. So if you're suffering from severe depression or even psychosis, which is a worrying one, 2 weeks you have to wait, which is insane. And this is the only reason it's 2 weeks is because the team there have set that limit themselves. So even like within Manchester, yes, but nationwide, it's a massive issue.
Yeah, and one of the things that we wanted to help with this channel is helping people who are underrepresented within politics or don't have their voices heard can have that outlet to reach people. And this is something we find with those with the most severe mental health illnesses, is that oftentimes they are not represented in the media or by politicians. And it's clearly the case in Manchester that those communities, because they are not represented well enough, have been left to basically be starved of resources. This is something that could affect anyone. It could happen to anyone in your family, any of your friends. It could just happen, and we'd like to think that it could even happen to one of us. It could happen to you. That those resources would be there to help, but they're not. And so this is an issue that will run because if nothing's done to provide more funding, which Dr. John Mulligan has talked about, and you can read his article on the Northern Rose about this, if more resources are not made available, then things will continue to degrade in quality.
Yeah, and I just think it's really an example of where the road of austerity leads to. It's like this idea that we can keep cutting back public services, keep cutting, and then, while on the surface, people might, a politician going into the halls of Parliament, or if you go to work, your 9-5, you might not necessarily see to what extent the damage that austerity is doing.
And also, austerity starts around 2009, 2010. So it takes a long time for those cuts in funding for you to see those negative impacts. They oftentimes don't manifest instantly, but over time, the services, they try to exist at a good level, but as people are continually paid less, more burden is put on workers. They simply cannot maintain the standard.
People are burning out, aren't they?
People are burning out. They leave the jobs, and then you see 10, 20 years later, the services have diminished to the worst. And this is not to say, again, that the employees are responsible, but simply they do not have the people power or the resources available to provide even the basic services.
Yeah, and I think when people have been going on strike, which I guess we've been covering a bit on this channel, it's not even necessarily for more money. It's just to maintain a standard of service.
Yeah, and we'll come back to the strikes, I'm sure, but most of the striking is simply because people are taking pay decreases due to inflation, real-term pay decreases. And a lot of it is about dignity in the workplace. And as those resources are cut, not only do you sacrifice pay increases in line with inflation, but you're expected to sacrifice your dignity at the workplace. And I think that is, that is despicable that people are being asked to, basically give up basic workplace standards like being able to go to the bathroom, especially in case of the bus drivers.
Yeah. It's kind of like we're in 2025 and we seem to be going backwards. I think
we are,
and I think that is quite clear within the coverage of the city. So, the mental health care crisis is something that is still rolling on, and I'm not sure it's going to get better anytime soon, to be honest.
No, and I think as a city, those who are most vulnerable, those are the people that you have to focus on, because again, it comes down to that old cliche, but I think it holds true, is that you are only as strong as your weakest member. And if we allow those at the bottom of the kind of hierarchy of needs, or the bottom of society, if we allowed them to just fall off, then where do we draw the line? And I think that is the case, is that we're starting to see more and more people just falling off that bottom rung of the ladder into homelessness, into despair. And if there's no backstops there, if there's nothing to prevent that happening, then it will just get worse and worse. More and more people will fall off that bottom rung of the ladder.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, really. And it's like, well, that ladder is only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, isn't it? So this is the thing, is like, well, people might be comfortable now. Like, it's coming for you.
I think this is the point, is that you might be comfortably middle class. You might not have to worry too much about paying the bills. You might not have to worry too much about current financial constraints. But wealth inequality continues to grow. Bills continue to go up, wages continue to decrease in line with inflation. And if you are in any of those boats, and you're effectively losing out compared to what the ultra rich are making each year, then eventually, whether it's you or your kids, you won't be able to compete, and you'll find life becoming increasingly difficult, and the strains that might not exist now will exist in only a matter of time. And with the current direction of things, with inequality and the AI boom, which will not benefit normal, ordinary working people, will only benefit the wealthiest, it will continue to become more and more unequal.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good segue to when we were actually covering the UCU strikes. Mm-hmm. And they were striking on, what street was it? I can't remember.
Whitworth
Street, yeah. And what they were really arguing was that their business made £16 million in profit last year, yet they're expected to take a below rate of inflation pay offer.
And after a round of redundancies as well.
Yeah. So they're being asked to work harder for less. So, and like one of the interviews says, interviewees say in the video, is that they're being asked to take less money home to their families while being asked to work harder. And that this is just like symptomatic of a lot of the issues that I think people in Manchester are facing right now. And obviously you get the know-it-alls on the the social media comments saying,
but we love all of our commenters.
Yeah, we do. Thank you. Just saying like, well, who are you to say how much profit's acceptable? And no one on the picket lines that I've spoke to, or well, I've been with you, so no, I've not heard a single person say that someone shouldn't be able to earn a lot of money. Not one single person. People have actively said, if you've got a good wage, fair play to you, good for you for doing that. But that shouldn't come to the expense of someone who's just trying to make a decent living.
Yeah. No, I don't think there's any workers who are against kind of people earning more than them. No one's saying everyone should be on the same wage. but people are against obscene wealth, like CEOs that are earning 200 times employees in the same business. Are they doing 200 times as much work? I don't think you could say on any metric they're doing 200 times more. Or in some cases, the wages are even more absurd than that. But people are more interested in kind of the dignity in the workplace, because these people oftentimes are doing jobs that, like teaching. For many people, it's a rewarding, or should be a rewarding job. They're not actually interested in becoming rich from it. Like nobody gets into teaching to be as rich as a banker, or
to drive a Ferrari.
Exactly. But they're in it because it offers something rewarding. But if your conditions are so bad that the job is no longer rewarding and it doesn't pay, who's going to do it? And this is the same for all of our essential jobs, is that a lot of the time people will say, oh, well, those jobs are rewarding, so you don't deserve as much money. That's another argument, and I don't think it's fair. But some of these jobs are more rewarding than others. But as soon as the dignity is taken away and the conditions are so horrible that nobody would want to do it, we risk basically becoming a country where, it is only the most well-paid jobs, which are in many cases non-essential or can be often described as bullshit jobs, that will continue to, basically give people a decent standard of living. And those jobs that we actually need people to do are no longer properly livable.
Yeah, I just think. So we started this YouTube up in around, like, we fully committed to it in August, and we can see it throughout the city with our essential services, and there's more stories from the NHS which we've not addressed yet, but they're equally as shocking. And you're thinking, this is our healthcare. Where is all of this going? And I just think that people might not always necessarily grasp the need, I guess, the time pressure. Like, we need immediate action here, I think, because it feels like a slow slide away. But if we don't nip it in the bud now, it's just getting worse, and I worry that it's going to get to a point where it will go past the point of return. I mean, some may even argue that we already have, but this is having real people are dying, I think, because they cannot get access to healthcare, or I mean, it's all linked, isn't it? All these services, they're essential services, so they're all linked. But the worse and worse they get.
Well, yeah, if you have to wait 2 hours for an ambulance, there is a high likelihood that people who have severe, urgent emergencies will die in that waiting time. Like, every minute that somebody having a heart attack has to wait increases the likelihood that they will not survive that heart attack. And so, and then that's across. You've got all the other issues, like, are there hospital beds available? Are there doctors available? All of those things compound on one another, and that's why at first austerity maybe you don't see its instant impacts, but over time it just compounds, and suddenly everything looks way worse.
And this is the thing as well, which is keeps me up at night, is that, for example, our taxpayer money that is made in this country, or for example, it's made in Manchester. When there aren't hospital beds available in the NHS, where do people then go? They go to private hospitals, which are footed by the public. But that money then is not going back into the public spending. It's being extracted to America. So we're actually, our resources are being taken away from us here. And that is clear, because I think Manchester as a city as a whole, the wealth inequality is growing. We are getting... It's getting worse, Public services are getting worse, and it's clear to see. So, I think people need to wake up to the fact that the private companies are not the answer. I mean, even within the country, private people from down south are providing private services here. I mean, they even own the buses, and the money that you spend getting on a bus here is then not going back into Manchester. So, for example, people don't seem to have solidarity or empathy with the bus drivers, but
we must say some people online, whereas I think in person, a lot of people do. It's more. Yeah. I think this is a problem in general with social media.
And I've been going down the rabbit hole for sure.
The more detached you become from reality, the harder it is to have empathy and solidarity with working people. But this is a point that Ian made when we spoke to Ian.
Yeah.
Is that ultimately, if you are not seeing this as part of your battle, if you want to stay detached and uninvolved, I can understand that. And it's hard to think, I may have to do something here. Because in many cases we think, well, we pick our politician and they'll fix it for us. But politics is only a tool through which to have your voice heard. But ask yourself something. How many politicians do you know? How many politicians do you think truly represent you? If the answer is 0, then you are not being represented. And your conditions will worsen. And so that this is your fight. And if you decide to stay out of it, you've already lost. And that might be a slow bleeding out over time. It's like a poisoning, really. And that's what the Tories were best at, is that they'll poison you to death. Reform might just try and shoot you to death, but our previous political system, and even with Labour now, feels like a poisoning.
It's a slow death.
It's a slow death where really the US is like a vampire sucking our blood, sucking our resources out of us, letting us die a slow death, and then they'll tell us it's the fault of immigrants or refugees or trans people.
Benefit claimers.
And the thing is, the EU is by no means a perfect organisation. The EU can be criticised, for as long as you want, but at least in the EU, there are more workers' rights and protections. And at least in the EU, there are countries like France where workers don't put up with this kind of nonsense. And the thing is we need to recognise now is where do the 99% of us, where do our interests best lie? And it's not with the US, because look at what Trump's doing. He is basically saying, all of you 99%, I'll take away your healthcare, or increase the price of your healthcare, take away your education, take away all of these things, and give tax cuts to those who are already obscenely wealthy. And so we need to recognise that this fight is our fight. And it's hard to say because, we think that politicians and politics is there to do it for us, but it's reached the point where we cannot rely on politicians anymore because... And there was a president, I can't remember who it was, maybe it was Eisenhower or FDR, I can't remember which one, but they said in an interview, if you want things to happen, you have to get out there and make me change things. I can't do it alone as the president. I need the popularity of the people to drive change. And this is why things like mass protests, mass strikes, mass gatherings can influence change, because when we're out there and showing that we want things done, the politicians can go, well, we can't do it. We have to do it. We can't, the lobbyists can't influence us because look at what the people will do if we don't do these things. Yeah. And so it's difficult to say, and it's difficult to hear sometimes, but really it's on us. And if we're not out there trying to make change happen, then we're already losing.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the crux of it, isn't it? And, when we talk about these cuts to public spending as well, it only makes society a worse place, because I sat and spoke to 2 feminists from the Someone I Knew campaign. And when you look at that crime statistics, it's not as people, I know the having your phone stolen in London is just everywhere, isn't it? But it's not. It's violence against women, which is the main source of crime in in Manchester.
Probably the main source of crime across the world.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And that's getting worse. Like it's not someone like being like robbing your house in the middle of the night. Or even as Richard Tice would tell you, knife crime or Farage. It's not that. It's violence against women, and that's going to get worse, and it is getting worse. And I just think it's all linked, and I'd recommend listening to that podcast or checking out their campaign, because they're working tirelessly, and it's hard because it feels like a lot of time you're swimming against the current.
And well, I mean, I think this links back to our discussion or our coverage of your party and the Greens as well, in a way, which is to say, although these politicians support issues that many of us can get behind, they are anti-austerity, they are pro improving welfare, pro reducing wealth inequality. Again, these politicians are not the magic bullets. They're not the saviors who will fix everything for us. Unfortunately, I wish that was the case, but we have to realise that each and every single one of us has a certain responsibility at this point in time. Our grandparents in the 1950s, 60s realised their responsibility. They came out the war, they were in abject poverty, the country needed rebuilding, and people didn't just say, we can't do anything here. People realised we have to come together, and we have to build a future that will benefit our kids and our grandkids. And then what happened was people became complacent. Things were going well. There was economic growth. Living standards improved. And there was a complacency. And that complacency has led us to where we are now. And I think that it's absolutely right when Ian said generations have grown up without really understanding or seeing or participating in strike action or collective labour movements. And this skill, it's like a muscle. We've stopped using it, and now it's withered away. It's withered away, and now we are just open to the crashing waves of the employers, of the powerful, of the wealthy, telling us that it's our fault that we're poor, or that we're that our living standards are decreasing. And it's on us to really say, well, actually, there is more of us than there is of you, and we're going to change things. And as much as I'd say, I think Zach Polanski's doing a great job of bringing attention to these issues, of increasing support for them. He himself is gaining support. Corbyn and Sultana, again, clearly have lots of public support. They will not be able to change things unless we change them.
Yeah, they need support. They need backing, don't they? But like, he's a busy guy as well. Like someone like Zach Polanski, for example, he's constantly campaigning for these, policies. He can't be out there talking to people all the time. He needs to. It needs to come through grassroots movements, which is why I think that Someone I Knew campaign is so great too, because they're essentially taking matters into their own hands. They're going onto the streets of North Wales and Manchester to campaign for women's safety.
Yeah,
and raise awareness for it. And I think that's the only way, isn't it? It's like just make noise about what you want to happen, because I think we're at a time now, especially where it's easy to ignore people on the internet. An email is very easy to ignore, even a phone call to an extent. Like, you've got to go somewhere physically to be heard. And that's, I think, when we talk about, like, as generations, that's another thing that we've lost. I think it only, what we're doing here, like, sometimes it'll only go so far. Like, we have to go out on the streets to talk to people, to understand it. We can't sit in our bedroom, in our room, and expect to make a change. It's not going to happen.
No, and we talked, one of the articles recently on the Northern Rose was about how it only takes, actually, in many cases, a few people to really impact the world. And one of the examples was obviously Gary Stevenson, One guy started off in his kitchen talking about wealth taxes, now has a major impact on public consciousness. It's now overwhelmingly popular and supported by majority of Brits, a wealth tax. Zoran Mamdani started with 1% of the vote share for New York mayor, 1%, probably had like less than 1% name recognition. 1 year later, won with 50%.
Yeah.
Obviously had a slick social media or like communication campaign, but he pushed for, straightforward social issues like free buses, free childcare, or affordable childcare and affordable housing, which are like pretty standard policies in most sort of Scandinavian cities. And New York is the richest city in the world, in the richest country in the world. And he was just pushing for things that are standard across Scandinavian cities. So, and he managed to win with overwhelmingly supported by New Yorkers. And so really these things don't take many people to really shift the consciousness, but it takes people.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing anything, if we're not doing anything, nothing changes. And this is the thing, if we can just change how we think about things, then maybe we can change our community and how they think about things, then they might be able to change another, and it's cumulative to the point where potentially we can actually change the national conversation. But like you said, Henry, it comes from the grassroots. It has to start in the local communities. It has to start with the trade unions. It has to start with people who are seeing these issues in their day-to-day lives. And the politicians can do as much as they want, but like Zoran Mamdani will not be responsible for the change. He will be part of the change, but it will ultimately be down to ordinary New Yorkers who are not only voting for him, but enacting these changes.
And continue to back him as well.
Yeah.
That's what it needs. And I am at the moment doing this, I'm tired. Like, it is like, it's hard work, and you feel like you are being eroded a lot of the time, just, constantly trying to get people's attention to these things. And, I go to trade union meetings and people go, how's it going? And you just like, and you kind of sigh a little bit and they go, are you tired? And you're like, yes. And I think it's a feeling that a lot of people are having, because there are people out there thinking this is getting worse, trying to change things, and you are hit by resistance a lot of the time. And don't get me wrong, it's a good thing that people are resistant to ideas, because that's part of the process of convincing things. We don't want people just blindly following stuff. But then I guess why are people happy to blindly follow reform candidates? For me personally, I'm at a point now where I don't understand it. I think, what's it, George Finch in Nottingham? Mm-hmm. Like, what is going on there? Like, it's just mad. And like, I think it was either Leicestershire or Nottinghamshire. They're spending 75 grand on flags. You're like, what on earth? Like, if that doesn't convince you that reform aren't serious people, I don't know what will.
The aim is to grow the economy by making loads and loads of flags.
And they were getting ripped off with the flags too. I don't know and like they're paying like £400 for a flag. Like who's what on earth is going on there? And you've got people who are like struggling, and people. I don't know,
I mean, for me, I don't think it's that confusing why people would support reform. Like, if you feel that politics has let you down, you will pick the option that seems like a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
And that's what people did with Trump. They picked the option that looked like a sledgehammer to traditional politics. But as I've said, on this podcast already, is that politics it's a tool to try and affect change, but the real means of changing things is down to us. And like we've seen in the US with pushback against Trump, the No Kings protests, where millions of people take to the streets, these are the really transformative moments. Nepal just overthrew the government. Young people, Gen Z, overthrew the government. That's real change. You know, if your government and your politics is no longer able to enact change, then your only option is through you, the people. And, you know, we would never say that is what we should be doing, because that causes chaos. And politics is a tool through which to non-violently affect change. And you can pick your candidates and, you know, you can work with them, but it's never quick change. Politics and quick change isn't always good, but we are in a situation where we have to shift how we think about our finances and our monetary policy, because wealth inequality, and Gary Stevenson has talked about this so much, but it is growing at such a rate that our government is so indebted, we the people are so indebted to the ultra-rich that we are effectively shackled to their demands. And like Rachel Reeves, it just came out in the news today, is considering no changes to income tax in the budget. And then suddenly there's stories about the UK bond market responds badly to chaos in Rachel Reeves's budget. And you think, why are we hostage to a bond market or to any market at all? Obviously, we would say income tax. I personally don't believe that income tax should increase for working people. I actually think that it should be a wealth tax on people who earn ridiculous sums of money through simply holding assets. Whereas if you work, it doesn't matter how much you earn, and although in some cases it again is obscene, but if you're working, at least that work is, you know, you're contributing. Yeah, it's productive. You're contributing to the economy. But this is the thing: is like, at what point do we all say we will not be hostage to financial interests, to moneyed interests? And this is those commenters are being told in the media day after day, oh, you know, we have to be careful about the bond markets, or Rachel Reeves can't do a wealth tax because the rich people will flee. These are the most obscene propaganda lies that people are convinced by because they're told it so much. And it's like Charles Dickens wrote about the factory owners saying this in his day, saying they would say, we'll take the factories and throw them into the sea if you increase taxes. It's the same thing over and over again. But here's the thing. These businesses need stable countries with good infrastructure to operate. So they're not going to pick up their businesses and go off to countries like Sudan that are completely unstable and you can't
it's just
operate
like even
in.
India, right? India, which you think massive economy, they've got like mountains of like rubbish and their air is toxic. Like, I'm not being like, who wants to go and do business there?
Companies want to work in the UK because it's a good place. It might not be for, you know, much longer if we continue on the current trajectory, but it's a good place to set up a business and operate in. And the idea that they would just leave is, I mean, it's frankly ridiculous. Lena Khan, who was the FTC, so in the US, I think it's the Federal Trade Commission. So they manage monopolies and monopolistic behavior in the US to try and prevent monopolies happening and to keep competition. And she said that in New Jersey, so next to New York, they increased income taxes on the wealthiest. And rather than seeing rich people leave, they actually saw more millionaires go into the area. And this is the thing, is like there is not really any evidence to substantiate the claims that increasing taxes on the wealthiest will lead people to leave.
It's just like a myth though, isn't it? It's like a long accepted, like I think in this country, in our culture, we have certain myths about things that come from like no like reason or rhyme, but are just widely accepted. And one of them is that if you raise taxes on millionaires, they'll leave. And I just think, you know, perhaps some will leave. I mean, we've done a podcast with Joe Wright from Tax Justice UK, and they research all of this stuff, and they've got endless statistics to prove that, perhaps one or two will leave, but like the net tax revenue from the people that leave far outweighs it. And you know what? If you're not backing, and this is the thing for me, if you're not backing a project where you're making the country a better place, well, just go then.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Funnily enough, Nigel Farage, who has backed Trump to increase tariffs on the UK, backed Trump in suing the BBC, basically never says anything good about Britain. Just leave then. We don't want you here if you hate Britain, which he does.
And this is the thing now, because like I've been like looking about Mussolini. It's like Mussolini said he loved the fatherland, this and that and the other, but he actively went to go against the interests of Italy.
To destabilise it.
He actually destabilised it. So then when people had had enough and there was fighting on the streets, who did they look to for stability? Mussolini.
Like Trump as well, destabilise the US and then
it's just like
come up through the middle.
Yeah, it's Farage as well. Like, put taxes on us, make us poorer, like make the country suffer, and then people are looking for this alternative. It's like Brexit. He's already done it. He's
already done it. Destabilise the country through Brexit, and then somehow escapes any credit for Brexit.
Oh well, he wasn't
in government. That's what they say.
And it's like, it was his idea. Like,
well, he drove it.
He drove it, and like this is the thing. His best mate, Aaron Banks, he has a Russian wife, and look, I'm not saying that would mean anything, but he's been influenced by the Russians, and that's Farage's best mate and financial backer.
Reform are constantly linked to Russian interference. His one of his mates, who was the old leader of Reform in Wales, has gone to jail for taking Russian bribes for influence. So he is completely attached to Putin and Putin's regime. That's simply unavoidable. But one thing, I never like to say or criticise people's intelligence, because I actually don't think people are thick. I think that they just make decisions based on the information available to them, and they make decisions purely from going, well, here's what I've been told, here's the information I have, here's what people around me are saying. That's not stupid. The problem is there are certain, and I would say, I don't like to say it all the time, but I think people like Rio Ferdinand is a stupid oaf. Like, he's in Dubai and he's saying, just people will just move to Dubai because we're paying these high taxes and our services aren't working for us. And I'm thinking, what do you mean, you absolute thicko? You're not using the NHS anyway. You're not using public transport. You're not using these services anyway. Dubai doesn't even have a properly working sewage system. This is a country that purely tries to attract influencers and people like that, has zero culture, is too hot to really walk around in for most of the year outside, lacks all of these kind of things. You can take your private jet and fly wherever you want.
Fly back to England to watch a football game.
And your assets as well. Everyone says, well, capital is extremely mobile. Capital is not actually always that mobile, because your housing, your property, your land cannot move. Your stocks and shares, those businesses stay where they are. Certain assets are not actually that mobile. Most of the time it's cash. Cash is the most mobile asset. But who really the people that wealthy don't really want to keep that much of that much of their assets in cash.
Well, I think if you look at the quality of Rio Ferdinand's football commentary, that really goes to show. Really,
yeah, it's true. Not particularly good at that job as well. Yeah,
but still got probably paid a lot of money for it. Which, if you'd ask me, is it's beyond me. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and one more thing about this as well is that if these people who are saying they want to go to Dubai because tax rates are too high, well, first of all, how much tax are they really paying in the UK anyway? And secondly, let them go. Like, I honestly think if you're not prepared to make sacrifices to help your country survive, to protect the people at the bottom, then I genuinely don't think you understand what it is to be British. Because I would say, isn't that, if we need a national message, a national story, something that makes us who we are, isn't it that we protect those who need protecting? Is that what we want to be? Or do we want to be the country that kicks those who are most vulnerable, who says, you know what, we only protect the closest people to us and we hate on those who we don't know, or those who are the most vulnerable? Like, who do we want to be? And that's ultimately a question that I don't think we ask enough of, is who do we want to be? And the British project is not one that is will go on for 10 years, 20 years, that hopefully, we hope it goes on forever. So we need values that will last that time. We need things to work for that we can work for forever. And that's it. That is something where we need to go. Hopefully, we want to be people who make the world a better place. And if those are our values, we need to work to them constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's, you know, we just had Remembrance Sunday, and you kind of think, like, what does it mean to you to remember those people? And for me, it's the plight against fascism, and that, you know, everyone has a right to you know, be free, like liberal values. I thought that's what we remembered, and that's what we stood for, and that's what we fought for, and what so many people lost their lives for. And I think now people people's greed is willing to undermine like these liberal values, really, like the freedom of like education. If you're not willing to pay your tax, how are people supposed to go to school? And while Rio Ferdinand can sit there in Dubai and count his money, like are people in Dubai going to school?
Well, they're going to their international. I mean, Rio Ferdinand, presumably his kids are, I don't know, old enough that they're not.
But I mean, like people in Dubai, like young, like children in Dubai, are there public schools for them to go to? Like
yeah, presumably there must be. Yeah, presumably. But I think most of the people in Dubai, because a lot of the money is through oil. Many of the citizens are wealthy, like in many of the Middle Eastern or the Gulf countries. So, like on average, the people are probably, you know, closer to being millionaires.
But they do have a massive immigrant population in Dubai. That's what I'm saying.
The immigrant populations, they are basically in like terrible conditions.
No freedoms,
they have no worker protections. They are basically treated in a form of indentured labour where they are don't really earn enough to ever escape the kind of servitude that they're in.
And that's not freedom, is it?
No.
So if that's the kind of thing that Rio Ferdinand wants to contribute to, then well, he can go then. As far as I'm aware, that's like, these aren't the values that I'm signed up for personally.
Yeah, so, and the thing, you know, Nigel Farage, when he was younger, was reported to have sung Hitler Youth songs whilst, you know, parading around. I can't remember where it was, but probably like Surrey or something like that. You know, this is a guy who is, I mean, if he's singing Hitler Youth songs, he's probably close to being a fan of Hitler. And
well, I mean, it was a long time ago, wasn't it? And I think at some point people can change. But it stands to reason, though, doesn't it? Like I'm not going to say, I don't think Farage would be a fan of Hitler now.
Probably,
convinced.
He'd probably do that thing where he goes, well, you know, he had some good ideas, which is what a common thing is on the right, to say now that, well, you know, Hitler had some good ideas. That's what they'll say.
It's just the people that I think he surrounds himself with. Because, like, you've got Lee Anderson, right? And I think he got into a spat with a feminist on Twitter, and it's like, well, why are you doing that anyway? But they were like, women have to deal with a period every month. What do men have to deal with? And he replied, the Battle of the Somme. And it's like, what planet are you living on to use something like that? It's like that's how little I think Lee Anderson cares. Well, it's like he is willing to use like a tragedy like the Somme to win a Twitter spat.
Well, this is the thing now, is that a lot of these politicians will use humour to diffuse serious questions or serious points. So there's a thing where Caroline Levitt, so Trump's press secretary, was asked something about, well, I can't remember exactly what it was, probably about the Epstein files or something like that. And her response was just, your mum. And it's like so childish. But I think...
Well, it's like people's lives. Like, it's serious, isn't it?
If you don't believe in the means of politics as a means of changing your life anymore, then maybe you'll just be open to this kind of like banterous way of doing politics. And I think, you know, that's a really sad thing, that if you don't believe politics can affect your life anymore, then, you know, you will probably be open to politicians who just seem like at least they blatantly show it that they don't give a shit, and they're kind of at least having a laugh with it. But I do think that we really, and this is shown in studies from across the world, is that as trust in politics decreases, these unserious candidates come to the fore, and actually they benefit more from this distrust, which actually just leads to a downward spiral where you get more and more corrupt politicians.
And then do the Mussolini, I'm the only one you can trust to sort.
Exactly.
Continuing.
You can't trust any of the others except for me, the biggest snake oil salesman of them all, which is obviously the Trump thing. Yeah. But this is, ultimately politicians can try to earn the trust. But it goes back to that earlier point, is that people have to, rather than picking people who want power, we have to select the people who are right for the job. Not the people who demand power, but those who we've seen are competent and have built trust, have earned trust. Then those people need to be put into the positions of power. Because ultimately, too much of modern politics is people who are desperate for power, but will backstab their way to doing it. They will have very little... They'll basically be loyal to no one, build almost no trust, but are able to propel themselves into positions of power through lying. Whereas actually what we need is the opposite of that. We need people who, they might not always say the things we want to hear. In fact, in many cases, they'll say the things we don't want to hear, but they'll be honest and build the trust. And they probably will say, well, they don't even really want to run for those top positions, but unfortunately, they will be the ones who are best positioned to lead the country.
Yeah, and I think, to bring that back to Manchester, you can see it because you've got people who are like trade union representatives, and they go out and they voice the concerns of the people, and they're not making thousands of pounds or making like massive decisions about people's futures, and they're really the ones that the people have put in to represent them. So I think we'll stand at this crossroads at the moment. I don't know.
Well, I think that's the point now, is that we need to see that. And this is a problem again with social media, is that people are not connected to their communities, but we need to see people coming up from communities who are picked by their communities to represent them. And unfortunately, whether that's a realistic notion for the near future, I don't know. But if you know that there are people in your community who represent you and who are able to communicate the community's issues and who are able to address them and articulate them, these are the people that we need to push to enter politics. And, that's a huge responsibility, because you're asking someone to sacrifice. In many cases, they may have a very comfortable or a reasonably comfortable life for something that is hostile, like politics. The media environment is definitely favoured towards the right, and so left-wing candidates will be attacked constantly, like Zach Polanski. Now almost every day or every week there's an article trying to criticise him or insult him, whether it's about constantly criticising him about things like his teeth or anti-Semitic depictions of him. And this is the same for any up-and-coming left-wing candidate or someone even from say a community or a trade union. But we would really like to hear more, if you can think of any examples of people in communities who are making this change, or even stories from across Manchester that you think we've missed. We would love for you to get in touch and email us at thenorthernrosenews@gmail.com. Please get in touch, because we'd love to platform people that we think could make the change that we've talked about.
Yeah, should we leave it there?
Yeah, so thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us. A bit of a rant, but it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think. Anyway, right. Thank you, thank you for listening. See you soon.